He is the voice of 3x3 basketball. We welcome Kyle Montgomery onto Hoopsology. How's it going, Kyle?
It's going good, going good. Excited about 3x3, especially on the heels of the Olympics. So happy to be on, man. Really.
Well, I appreciate you coming on to the show. And 3x3, I'll totally admit, it's something that hasn't been directly on my radar until the last few years, but I just find it extremely fascinating. It's something that is going to be on the rise and something for like casual basketball fans. I think they should really pay attention to because I think it's going to be more prevalent in just kind of the mainstream sports culture. But before we get to 3x3, Kyle, I just want to get a little bit of your background. We usually ask a lot of our guests that have come on to the show, what is your first basketball memory or favorite basketball memory?
My favorite basketball memory. Okay, I was in college and I was playing pickup in the gym, and this guy was bigger than me. He's like 6'5". Put the ball between my legs. I faked like I shot it. He went for the fake. Then I went to the rim. He met me at the rim, and it was the most vicious dunk I've ever completed on somebody. The whole gym cleared out. That's my moment of glory in basketball. But as you know, I've had a lot of a basketball experience. Covered the NBA, and I played a little bit in high school. So, but that's the one that sticks out to me. Now, as far as maybe what I've seen, Paul George against the Clippers on a fast break. He during the game he went 360 through the legs.
Oh man.
Yeah. So there's one of me and one of somebody else. There you go.
So, Kyle, I want to get into the story of how you became the voice of 3x3 because every time I look at your Instagram, you're in like all different types of different countries. You must have the greatest passport ever, just in terms of the different countries you've been to. So, how did this journey begin for you becoming the voice of 3x3?
Well, it came out of left field. I had no idea that it was going to be something that I would be, doing now 6 years later. But I'm here in LA. I'm working for the Clippers and also the NFL at the time. And I kind of got a random email. It's a guy named George Bakour who was telling me about this FIBA 3x3 thing they had going overseas, and showed me a long list of cities that they would be visiting. And he said that would I be interested? He knew my work from when I used to do the top 10 highlights on NBA.com. And he thought that I would be a good fit for what they were trying to create, in Europe and in Asia with FIBA 3x3. So initially, I was a little bit apprehensive about it. I was saying, I don't know what this FIBA 3x3 is. But I did see, an opportunity there for, to travel and, see other parts of the world. But also, I've always been somebody in my career who's been willing to take risks. And this was one of the risks I was willing to take. So I went out to a tournament in Switzerland, my first ever 3-on-3 tournament. We call it 3x3, but I know in the States we refer to it as 3-on-3. But I went over there and I called my first action. And, the competition, I didn't think the talent at that time was, top notch, considering that I had covered the NBA and, college hoops at a high level in the States. But I knew the concept of the game, has some real potential. 12-second shot clocks, 10-minute games, half court, a lot of space for, really talented players to be able to create, a lot of highlights and excitement for fans. So I said, this is something that's worth me pursuing. I was aware at the time that they were, pitching the sport to the Olympics. We had no idea at the time if it was going to be picked up or not, but we saw it obviously this year. So that's how I got into it. That was back in 2015 when I had no idea what FIBA 3x3 was, and now I've become the voice of 3x3.
So I was listening to your podcast that you host, and your co-host mentioned, and it was like a while ago, that the game in terms of popularity and talent is absolutely more progressed internationally compared to the states. It's kind of like a reverse. Can you kind of just go into that because this seems like 3x3 is very popular in kind of the international basketball community. Can you explain how that happened? Because we as arrogant Americans, we kind
Yeah.
of take credit for the game, but it's with 3x3, just watching the Olympics and that in this watching your work as well, it's caught on in the international community first. Do you know why that happened?
I have a theory. I think that over here, 5-on-5 basketball, it carries the ultimate goal, which is a road to the NBA. Kids, not only here in the United States, but globally, dream of playing in the NBA. It's considered to be the highest level of professional basketball. So here in the States, young players are fixated on that. That's the ultimate goal. I think in Europe, while kids do dream of making it to the NBA, Europe and Asia, I do think that they understand that it becomes less realistic for them. And that's not to say that we don't. We've seen several great European players make it to the
Yeah.
NBA. The road is a lot more difficult. So, they turn to 3x3. This is something that even 5-on-5 players play as youngsters.
Yeah.
You play on the streets, you get three dudes and three girls, and boom, you go against each other. Half court. So, we've seen the game very popular in Russia for a long time, in Romania for a long time, in Serbia obviously for a long time. They've picked up the game, and they love it so much they saw a market to where they could make it a professional league, primarily centered in Europe. And sure enough, we got some of the best 3-on-3 players in the world that reside in Europe, and now the United States is kind of trying to catch up.
Yeah.
They have the athletes and the talent, but as far as understanding the concept and the nuances of the game, that's something that we've seen historically. The European teams have a better grasp of that because they've been playing it from a young age, as opposed to United States kids that are playing looking for the 5-on-5 glory.
Forgive me for my ignorance, but we've recently seen in the states the rise of Big Three,
Yeah.
and can you kind of go over this the comparisons with the Big Three? At first being a veteran league, now incorporating other players that weren't a fit in the NBA, and now they're able to fit into Big Three. How does that league compare to 3x3? Are there like similarities, differences? Are you a fan of the Big Three? Not a fan? What's your opinion of that?
Well, I got respect for the big three. Because I have a hell of a lot of respect for Ice Cube. I think that he's done a great job building that league, but um, the games are much different, and they're built on different things. So 3x3, primarily, we want to create new stars, young stars. The format of the game is different. This game is quick. It's more physically demanding. You got 12-second shot clocks, 10-minute games. I think that Cube's league has a design where if you reach a certain amount of points, that becomes halftime. I do think it's cool that they have the 4-point play. That's dope. They are starting to incorporate some younger players. In fact, Dushan Bullet, you know, long time considered the greatest 3x3 player of all time. He's now played in that league, so we understand that they're expanding. But essentially, when Cube started the league, the big draw was some of your favorite players that still got something left in the tank. If you want to see them play, a lot of people say, man, I wish I could see Steve Francis hoop again. And here's a platform where you can see Steve Francis hoop again. So I think it's a good product. ISO Joe is a beast. They got
Yep.
some players that can still get it done. Corey Maggetti's a good friend of mine. I know that he's been hooping in that league for several years. So I think it's good, but we're talking about two totally,
Yeah.
totally different games. And I think the reason why you saw, 3x3 is an Olympic discipline this year for the first time ever is because of the challenges that the game, really poses. You look at athletes that have to be in top physical condition. I mean, you're going nonstop essentially. We call it a 10-minute sprint. So, yeah, I would venture to say that 3x3, FIBA 3x3 is better. And with all respect to the big three. Yeah.
Gotcha. And I want to talk to you about the women's 3x3 because we had Alicia Gray right before she was going to Japan for the Olympics. This is fascinating just talking to her just about kind of how she got involved. From, I guess, a women's aspect, incorporating, the WNBA, how is that infused into the game? And do you see maybe the men's game, going the same route, not necessarily with like NBA players, but international professionals as well. diversifying the talent pool. What's kind of your opinion of kind of the seeing the WNBA get involved in that? Because I think it's pretty cool just to see him in a different light with Gray in particular, who wasn't getting too much playing time with the Dallas Wings, but she's a primary member of the U.S. Team in 3x3. So what is that dynamic like?
Well, I think the game really allows certain players to shine in ways that they may not be able to shine on their particular professional team, because and it's not 3x3 has structure as well, but it's not nearly as structured in terms of having a system like 5-on-5. If you're a player within that system, then you got to behave within that designated role. 3x3 is more instinctive type basketball. It takes the reins off a little bit, and it lets players just kind of go and trust your instincts, do what is right as a hooper. And I think Alicia Gray is best when she's kind of off the leash. You let her go. She's creative. She knows when to pass. She knows when to shoot. She can score. She's dope off the dribble. So I really thought that playing 3x3, it really shone a light on just how good she can be. I thought it was dope that we saw an Olympic team with all WNBA players. Stephanie Dolson was huge on that team as well. So she won a WNBA championship this year. So I think it's great. The challenge is this, and a lot of people saying, "Well, they picking NBA players. Oh, if they had Kyrie and LeBron and this or that, a killer 3-on-3 team." But you have to play in FIBA sanctioned tournaments in order to accumulate the ranking points in order to be able to represent the United States. And for a while, there haven't been that many options for American players to play in FIBA sanctioned tournaments in the States. They would have to travel overseas. They would have to participate in Quest or Challengers, against these European players that they've never seen or they've never heard of in a new format. And I think that for NBA players specifically, because we're talking about a different financial risk. And you're talking about
Sure.
so they look at 3-on-3 and they say, "Wow, that'd be cool to play," but there's no way I could risk my health to play that game. If I was paying me $20 million a year, then maybe there's the financial incentive for me to play it. But there's no draw for them outside of wanting to represent their country in the Olympics and potentially win a different type of gold. So let's say LeBron James one day says, "Man, I got a gold 5-on-5. I'd love to have a 3-on-3 gold just to cement my trophy cabinet." LeBron would have to play in some FIBA sanctioned events. We'd see LeBron James playing against Dejan Majstorovic or Stefan Stojacic in FIBA 3x3. So I think that's why we don't see NBA players. We might start to see more what you would consider to be higher profile players, fringe players that could potentially play overseas. Potentially, we see G League players who play a little bit of 3x3. Alfonso McKinney for the Lakers. He played for Team USA along with Mike Henry. These are guys who have pro experience. McKinney's one of the more notable ones. So we've seen some players that have been kind of fringe NBA guys dip their toe in 3x3. We've seen several WNBA stars. Skylar Diggins is one of them who have played 3x3. But I think the financial risk is a little bit less for the women, and they tend to be able to work it out a little bit better from a scheduling standpoint too.
What do you think it's going to take to just increase the popularity of 3x3 in the States? Because I think there's a wide open market compared to, let's say, 10 years ago for watching basketball that is not college or the NBA, just through, Ball is Life is very popular with their videos. Just seeing TBT, that's just a popular tournament featuring just classic players from their college days. It seems like there's a pool of talent that doesn't fit in the NBA or international box of 5-on-5 that there's an opening there for a league that can flourish. Has there been any talks to perhaps spinning off the international game into an actual like professional league for 3x3, or is this pretty much going to remain kind of like a FIBA international game?
Well, the FIBA international game is, a professional league. These are considered pros. But in the states, um, I do see that they are starting to tap into that market. I don't know if you've heard of Hezzy God or Chris Staples. These are some
Yeah,
guys that is a dunk champion, and Hezzy God's a new kind of social media sensation. He's always crossing people. He's a great scorer. But these guys are also starting to transition into um, 3-on-3 or 3x3, and you better believe it. At one point, they had dreams of potentially playing in the NBA. But now, with Red Bull, now getting involved, and you see them with a 20 city tour this year, and having the World Red Bull regionals as well. Um, they're starting to dip their toe in. They're starting to open up opportunities. There's some other leagues in the United States. I do a tournament every year called the 3x3U National Championship. These are for players who have just exhausted their collegiate eligibility, so they were just seniors, but they represented all the major Division I colleges. So you want to talk about some serious talent
sure.
uh, that we have in that tournament. It's a bigger pot. I think it's $100,000 pot in that tournament. So that causes some athletes to move more that way to have an opportunity to win, more money, which is cash is king in the United States as
Yeah.
opposed to in Europe. Uh, Maybe not as much, not on that scale.
I want to ask you, Kyle, about your Olympic experience. Is probably unlike any other Olympics in history. What was just your experience in Japan like in terms of not having any fans there, just with all the safety protocols? What was that experience like? I believe this is like the first time 3x3 was featured in the Olympics. What was that like, and what are you looking forward to in the future in terms of improvements, in terms of kind of enhancing the game for the next Olympics coming around?
Well, yeah, the I didn't even actually get to travel to Tokyo. I did the Olympics remotely.
Oh
I
wow,
actually
okay.
did the Olympics from Stamford, Connecticut, at the NBC studios up there. So the experience for me, it was different because this is a game that I've covered, you know, face to face. You have to see the action up close. You have to really feel it. So doing it remotely was an experience, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. I had a great partner in Noah Eagle, young pro. He was
Yeah.
outstanding. Um, but for me, it was one of those moments because this was something again that I mentioned that I felt like I was kind of taking a risk on, and believe me, they were taking a risk on me as well because I had never called play by play before doing 3x3. I had never done it. I had simply done hosting, reporting, etc. So to take that chance and to see 3x3 featured in the Olympics, um, I knew that the product was going to be a good product, but I think that a larger audience, basketball fans, could appreciate what I appreciated back in 2015 when I first saw the game. So while every team isn't going to be dynamic and explosive and dunking on people and shooting threes, now people are starting to look at this game and they're saying, man, can you imagine so and so if they played 3x3? Oh, imagine this team. And so the conversation is there. They like the format of the game. They like the 12-second shot clock. And I do think they like the talent too. We had, the best teams in the world competing out there. That Latvian team, you know, believe it or not, they're going to beat a lot of NBA collections that you put together playing 3x3 because they understand the game better. So that Latvian team that wins gold, that Russian team that takes silver, that Serbian team that took bronze, make no mistake about it. You don't judge a book by its cover. Just because you're not getting the dunks and all the crossovers, these guys are cerebral players, smart basketball, players, high IQs. They can shoot. I thought that we saw, that on display, and obviously on the women's side as well. I thought it was outstanding to see Team USA, run through the competition, you know, with the WNBA players. they picked up the game, and they put in a lot of extra work, off the court to, make that transition from 5-on-5 to understanding, what makes you successful in 3x3. So, I thought they really, exemplified what 3x3 is about. They kind of showed us what that next level looks like, when you can combine that athleticism and that scoring, also with that 3x3 acumen too. So, Carol Lawson had them ready.
Yeah.
So Russia looked good too in taking the silver, and I thought China was a strong team. Japan looked great. There's a lot of teams out there that I thought really represented the game well. I think people are looking forward to the next Olympics and in Paris coming up in 3 years, and they want to see the next. Okay, now we saw the appetizer. That was just a little taste. Now we get to see what the next course is in terms of what 3x3 is going to bring. I think we're going to see even better competition, even better players, because of we'll be riding the fuel of the interest that's now on the heels of this previous Olympics.
I got a nerdy broadcasting question for you, Kyle. And with all the international players and a lot of those names are tough to pronounce, what was your preparation, especially remotely? Going into broadcasting your first Olympics. Can you just take me through kind of a maybe day by day of your prep in terms of announcing the names and just kind of any logistical things you had to prepare before your broadcast for the Olympic Games?
Yeah, well, a lot of meetings that we did, approaching the Olympics, because this was the introduction of 3x3 to the world, so a pretty big deal. In terms of the names, I was pretty familiar with most of the teams' names because again, I've been covering a lot of these players in Europe and in Asia for at least the past five years. So I was very familiar with the Russian team and the Latvian team, the Serbian team, the Polish team, et cetera, et cetera. But the challenge for me was um, really, kind of digging beyond that surface layer of who they are as a player. I could tell you, you know, what Carlos Lasmanis' greatest strength is. I can tell you about a highlight or a game winner that he hit 2 years ago, but I couldn't tell you about his relationship with his father, who was an Olympian as well. So I had to reach out and talk to people, and I learned that that his dad was an Olympic rower, and that the only thing that Carlos wanted to do when he grew up was become an Olympian and win a medal, for his dad. So, it was those type of stories, and getting to know the players on a deeper level. And I did that on the men's and women's side. I reached out to nearly every player,
Oh wow.
talked to some of the family members. I talked with Raylene Delia's family for a long time. She played for Team Italy. I spoke personally with all the Dutch players, and just trying to get to know who they were and different things like that I can share on the broadcast, because it was more than just introducing the game to a broader audience, but we were also introducing some of our stars, some of our players to a broader audience, and they want to know more than what was his percentage from 2 point land last year. They want to know the more personal side, and that's what kind of ties people to athletes, is those personal stories. So that was a big challenge. I always challenge myself to take it up a notch, and so I wanted to be sharp. I wanted to be good, have some new lines that I could drop. I had a few qualifiers that people like. I knew it would be a challenge though, because I have a little more freedom when you're talking about doing a broadcast for YouTube and a 3x3 stream, compared to, you know, talking about the Peacock, NBC. So I had to kind of reevaluate how I wanted to approach my delivery. Some lines and some things that I would do that would be a little bit more kind of for a family friendly atmosphere of fans who have known me for years. You know, I had to realize that there are a lot of people who don't know who you are, who haven't seen 3x3, and that joke that you might use with your audience that you are used to, you might want to hold off on that joke on NBC. So that's kind of how I tailored it a little bit.
Kyle, one last question for you. with FIFA 3x3, there's like so many exotic locations. It looks like a video game in terms of just the locations where these games are taking place. Can you kind of describe the decision process of the where to place these courts, and if there's any like logistical or kind of like any crazy stories in terms of like preparation of getting these games, put on in these unique locations?
Yeah.
What is that kind of process like?
Well, I couldn't tell you about the direct process, but I know
Sure.
that we have a great scouting team, and I do know that they look for UNESCO World Heritage sites. Um, we like to have our tournaments in the center of the city. A lot of foot traffic, an iconic site. We played the Europe Cup this year in front of the Eiffel Tower. We played in Amsterdam at near the Rijksmuseum, from Museumplein Square. It's one of the most iconic areas in Amsterdam, and we're right there. So I do know that that's a part of the planning, is making sure that it's somewhere that's really significant. We played in Prague in front of the Prague Castle, things like that. You know, I commend the team that puts it together. But I have no idea about the inner workings of selecting some of those places. But I've been so many places around the world that leave me in awe. I think the venue placement is key to the overall atmosphere. When you're playing off of the water, off of the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia, you know, it looks different. It feels different. That production is different. So I've been fortunate to call games in some really really cool venues, some really really cool spots, some historic locations. I'm just riding the wave. Whatever they're doing, I hope they continue to pick the best spots around the world because you know I get the benefit from it all.
Well, Kyle, appreciate you coming on to the show. Really enjoyed the chat. Can you please let our audience know where they can find you on social media and then any other projects you're working on as well?
Sure. Well, you can follow my podcast. Give us a like. We put one out every other Tuesday. It's called The Voice on 3x3 Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, The Voice on 3x3 Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, 3x3 The Voice. My broadcast partner at Dave Barr, D Bar as well. And you can follow me on Twitter, the _real Kyle M. Last but not least on Facebook, Kyle, the voice of PX3 Montgomery. There you go. That's all my social media handles.
Awesome, Kyle. This has been awesome. And hopefully, our audience will, this has opened their world to a whole new universe of basketball out there for them. Appreciate the time, Kyle.